I would like to welcome to everybody to the second symposium on cognitive neural engineering, natural, although we did not include artificial intelligence. Okay? I'm one of the co-organizers, but Gert did everything. He organized, and my name, Bruce, and Shankar's name just added, but our contributions are just a moral support to him. I'm also the president-elect of the EMBS. Shankar and I, we are really pushing to organize several forums, IEEE EMBS forums, 2020. One of them I will be organizing on data science in healthcare. It's going to be no more than 120 people. We will have it as a part of the forum. And the location will be either in Israel or in Switzerland or at Columbia University. I'll keep you posted on this. We will have a large component on the neuroscience on this event. And also we will have the chairs, the forum next month in San Diego. So our vision is to really promote technology for humanity. It's a mission of the great mission of IEEE. And both Shankar and I, we will push really promotion of the field of healthcare engineering more than biomedical engineering globally. That's our mission. I'm delighted to introduce our distinguished speaker, John Doyle from Caltech. He significantly contributed to the field of neural engineering, cognitive engineering, and I think he's ready to start.
Okay.
Great to see you, John.
Great, thanks. Thanks for the invitation. This is a lot of fun. So I have this incredibly pretentious title. And I do claim that the theory I'm going to tell you about, which I'm only going to talk about brains, applies to all this stuff. Here's the idea is that this talk is a trailer for a bunch of videos. So this will be like, supposedly we have to do it in 25 minutes. I've got about 3 hours of video that cover the same material. So here's the motivation. What do you have to do to do this? And this is not me. You have to deal with these bumps, and you do that with reflexes that are fast and inaccurate, and a bunch of other things. And the dynamics of the bike are unstable, but you also have to track the trail, and that's slow but accurate with a planning layer. And this is the important word here. You want to talk about layering. And this has stable, what I'm going to call virtual dynamics because of the reflex layer, and it's using vision. So how do we do this? And so the talk is really about that. And you're going to see a lot of pictures like this, which is that you've got a trade-off between speed and accuracy and a bunch of other things. And you've got a trail and a bump layer. And ideally, you would just be fast and accurate, but you only have these systems. And so we do multiplex this well. So make sure I picked a problem we do well. There's lots of stuff we do very badly. But I'm not going to talk about that. So what I'm going to talk about is diversity sweet spots. And how do you actually perform fast and accurate despite the fact that you don't have parts that do that? Okay. Now I'm projecting a whole high dimensional space into 2 dimensions. Why? So I can put them on a PowerPoint slide. But also it seems like 2 dimensions does a pretty good job of capturing the essential trade-off for this problem. And we'll say a little bit about what it's not capturing as well. So we have these 2 different things, and they're like extremely different from each other, fast versus slow, and you'll see these are opposite from each other. And we're going to focus on speed accuracy trade-offs because that's been studied a lot in neuroscience, and we're going to look at these robustness trade-offs. So that's the picture we're going to try to understand. And this is work with Terry, who's here, and I don't know any neuroscience. I'm a mathematician, so it's his fault. No, I shouldn't say anyway. I've tried to learn from him. And 2 former students who are now professors at Carnegie Mellon and SUSTech. So, okay. So, and lots of references. If you go find the videos, you'll find these papers sitting in some folder. It's not very well organized. So what I'm going to just mention that levels you already know about, because this is Terry's canonical picture. I'm going to make it a little simpler. Tissue, cells, molecules is a way of thinking about levels. And I'm not going to emphasize levels so much today because I'm going to emphasize layers. So this would be a tissue level. And within the tissue level, we're going to talk about layers. And layers and levels are orthogonal. This is terminology that comes out of internet. So people would call, TCP/IP a layer, application layer, and so on. And it's orthogonal levels. So we're going to focus on this initially, and we'll connect it up with this. So we want to put these two together, okay? But there's no layers in science, mostly. There is in biology, but there's no layers in physics. Whereas there are levels. That's what a lot of physics is about, is how levels relate to each other. So here's an example of layers and balance. I'm not going to do much about balance, so we just don't have time. So we're going to talk about this picture and this layers. So what we're doing is we're taking this problem, we're imagining that the total problem is decomposed into two parts, a trail layer and a bump layer. And we're going to want to understand how those work together and the speed accuracy trade-offs. So what we have is a theory with nice formulas, and it turns out that make sense of this. And then we're going to talk about the system level and the nerve level. And that all plugs together with a theory and some experiments. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the experiments as well. So there's lots of experiments you can do here. You can't do that. You can't get IRB approval to crash bicycles. So we can't do that. Now, what's really good is I have some really great demos, which if we had time for, we would do demos. And they would give you the qualitative feel for what these problems are. We don't have time for that. And another problem with those is that they're not quantitative data. So we've got this nice experiment that, I'm not an experimentalist, but this is so unstudied that I can be. So what you saw here was this trail scrolling down the screen, and you've got a wheel, and you track that trail. And what you want to do is make that error small, okay? And you can vary the amount of vision, you can vary how fast it turns, you can vary how fast it moves, you can vary everything. The bumps are because inside this wheel is a motor, and that motor can kick you around, and that's how you get bumps. Nice thing about this then, and everything is in software, and so you can make it have any dynamics you want, okay? So I want to tell you about what this theory is and how this all fits together, okay? So here's a block diagram of the problem with both the trail and the bumps part in it, but I'm going to pull it apart and look at it in pieces. So here's what the game components are, is your muscle has to go through to move this wheel, but there's a motor inside here. But there's also a trail, which is what you see on the screen, okay? And then all the dynamics that would normally be in the bike are just in software in the computer, okay? So the trail only part, the game motor is turned off. You have vision, you see the trail, and you have this time look ahead. So you have advanced warning. So we can make a little math model of it. Again, we can make the model in the computer be exactly this. And what you have is two problems. You have quantization and delay. But we're assuming that you have enough look ahead that you have a total net advanced warning given your visual delays. But you have quantization of V bits per unit time going through the visual system, okay? And so T could be negative, but we're going to assume it's positive, that we've got enough visual. So the theory lets you do both, but I'm going to simplify it. So the idea is that you can get an analytic formula for what the best possible performance is with V bits and advanced warning. And it's really quite simple. It's just static rate distortion theory, if you know what that is, plus a little bit of dynamics. So literally this is high school algebra, and we've taught this to high school kids. So one of the challenges in this area has been getting mathematics that's really accessible. So I figure if I can teach this to high school kids, I can teach it to my colleagues at Caltech. That's not proven to be true. Anyway, but the point is, if V is large, it swamps this term, and it looks like 2 to the minus V. So again, you get exponential, again, in rate distortion theory, you know this, you get exponential error reduction with the number of bits. So bits are very powerful here. So in the system, you want high bandwidth vision, and because you have advanced warning, it allows huge turns. So in this, the trail is going all over the place, and your error stays small, okay? The other side is just a straight line, no trail, and you just got bumps, okay? And the motor provides the bumps. And so now you have muscle spindles, so you can do this with your eye closed. Muscle spindles tell you where you are, but you now have R bits per unit time, and now you actually have delay, okay? And you have a model for it, you have quantization and delay, and again, an analytic formula for it. So Instability plus delay is very dangerous. That we all know. More delay is exponentially bad in this context. More bits are exponentially good. Okay. So you need small bumps. So notice you can have a big, huge trail, but the bumps better be small, or you die, right? Okay. Now here's the first key idea, is that these two errors just add. So if I can solve these two problems separately, if I have the right architecture, I put these together. And this is because we multiplex this well, we do this. Okay. So we're going to take a special case of marginally stable. Most systems are unstable, but at the sample rates we would use in the brain, it's not bad. And okay, so this formula simplifies to this. So let's look at this a little bit. This is the reflex part. Delay is linearly bad, but bits are exponentially good. So in reflex control, speed is a lot more crucial than accuracy. Accuracy is easy to get. Bits are cheap. Genes are cheap. Speed is what really costs you, unless you're a plant. But we need a nerve model to fill this out, okay? So what we want to do is actually look down at the nerve level and see what the speed accuracy trade-offs are at the nerve level and how it maps up, okay? So what we're going to find is that at the nerve level, R scales with T. So bandwidth and delay scale with a scaling that depends on the sort of the size of the nerve. Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about first. So again, back to the level. So now we're going to bring levels in. We're going to put the nerve level in. Okay, so again, we saw this before. We're going to do tissues and cells. So that's the picture we want to do. And so the idea is that accurate down here gives you accurate up there. Fast down here gives you fast up there. Again, no surprise, but surprisingly this hasn't been studied. So you have the accurate trail and the fast bumps. And we want to understand how those connect with each other. So we want to understand what the nerve level speed accuracy trade-off is. Okay, that's this picture. Where does that come from? So if we have that, we can just plug it into our formula, right? So our formula has explicitly the bandwidth and delay in here. So we now can just plug that in. And then, like I said, the error is that. Okay, so how are we going to think about a nerve? We're going to think about a nerve as just a bundle of axons, a cartoon here. You get quantization because you have R bits per unit time, and that would be just because they're spikes, and you have a finite number of them. Okay. The delay comes from the problem that you have spike propagation, and for the problems we're interested in, the propagation of the spikes swamps the synaptic delays. That would not be true in gray matter, but in white matter it is. So we're just going to worry about propagation delay. So we have two things. We have the delay and we have the bits per unit time. And we're going to sort of look at cranial nerves. Why? Because they're easy to study. People have studied them a lot. And so this is a picture I want to try to explain to you. So this is number of axons per nerve, and this is the average axon diameter. And I'll come back to this. Let me just give you a cartoon version. So this is an equal area in this log-log plot. And you can either have a lot of small axons, a few large axons, or something in between. Now you could have larger nerves or smaller nerves, and that's where all this would appear on this picture, okay? So here's where expense comes in. This would be very expensive. This would be quite cheap. And then these are all roughly equal costs to build and maintain, metabolic. But what we're doing is we're finessing the issue of this dimension by focusing on this dimension. That doesn't mean this doesn't matter. It's just that biology's already decided on this, so we're going to take it as given. Okay. So that's this picture. So now if we go back to this, what we see is the optic nerve has about 10 to the 6 axons, and they're roughly an average of about 1 micron. Olfaction, a lot more, smaller. The vestibular and auditory systems are out here. There's a lot fewer axons. They're a lot bigger. And then the sciatic nerve is off this curve. It's a lot bigger than these cranial nerves. Okay. So my claim is fast and accurate is in this corner, and we got this trade-off. And so if we want to quantify that, we're going to quantify it in terms of delay and minus log R, which is bandwidth, minus log, which is accuracy. Okay, so you're accurate down there, and so the idea is that, and I'm not going to go into this in great detail, but the idea is that they scale together. So bandwidth and delay go up together. High bandwidth, high delay. Low bandwidth, low delay. You'd like to just be fast and accurate, but the parts don't let you. Okay. Now, nothing depends crucially on this form of the formula, but there's got to be a trade-off. And every technology from this laptop to intracellular signaling has a trade-off. It would be a different shape of each curve depending on what the technology was. And we got help from Simon Laughlin in doing this, so he helped us in the initial thing in there. So. Okay, so that's the picture. Now the problem is, this has been studied in the past, but separately. So the control theorists worry about delay, and the information theorists worry about bandwidth, and never, as far as I can tell, never talk to each other within neuroscience. So our point is, you got to put both of them into the problem. You've actually got to have both bandwidth and delay, and this is the speed accuracy trade-off that occurs in the nerves. Okay, so that's that level. We got the layers up there. Now we got a theory that lets us plug all that in. And we have the fast part and the accurate part. Fast down here, fast up there, accurate here, accurate up top. Okay. So when we plug that back in, what we find out is we want what do we want in this part of the system? We want it to be fast, low bandwidth, low delay, but delayed sensing. So you have a real severe speed accuracy trade-off. You have to be fast here, and the consequence is you're going to be inaccurate. On the accurate side, high bandwidth, and again, coming in the optic nerve is 10 megabits per second or something, very high bandwidth. But high delay, big delay, relatively speaking. But you can afford to have that delay in vision because you're using it for advanced warning. Okay. So you see that this part of the formula comes from this part and this part up. I got that backwards. Sorry. Screwed up. This slide is wrong. The arrow should be the other way. I just made this slide and I can't believe I screwed it up. Okay. And again, the errors add. The nice thing is the parameters can be perturbed with software. So one of the nice things about this experimental platform is we can change everything. We can change the delays. We can change almost all aspects of it. We can even add in additional bandwidth delay trade-offs on top of whatever is in the human and see if they adapt to it. And so far, everything we've tried fits the theory like we cheated. And we sort of cheated in a sense because we cooked up a problem that was easy to model mathematically. But it captures an essential feature of neurophysiology. Okay, so that's the picture. So you have layers, levels, and these diversity sweet spots. So you get a diversity sweet spot down here. By combining these things, it creates a diversity sweet spot up there. Okay. Now what would happen if you add texting? Errors don't add anymore. They interfere with each other and you crash and die. So we picked a problem that was multiplexed well. Okay. Okay, so we got this picture. We could also do it on the muscle side. Same thing, you've got this diversity in the muscles. This is why you have Fitts' law, if you know what Fitts' law is. And this is everywhere. So it's in our technology, it's in this building. We have these, we create diversity and then create diversity sweet spots through architecture by getting the right architecture. Okay, so are there more levels? Yeah. Obviously you can go down a level. That's Terry's world. I'm going to not worry about that for now. Cells have diversity sweet spots as well in the way they control systems. You have layers and levels. So learning is a higher layer. We need to add this to the picture. We don't have it in the theory now. So the question is, how does learning fit into that? That's all important. Okay. So these papers are online. You can get them now. And we're trying to publish these in scientific literature. A little hard because theoreticians hate this. The experimentalists go, oh, cool. But the theoreticians hate it because it's new math. It's not hard math, but the math gets harder as you get into more theory. So let me just say one more thing, a little bit here. More theory. So that's this stuff called system level synthesis. Again, this has actually been published in engineering journals. So we saw this picture. Let me draw that picture on this line. Okay, so what you've got is you've got the bumps down here, fast, local, and unstable, and you've got the slow, flexible, centralized stuff for the trails. And then what happens is you combine them and you get this sweet spot. Okay, that's the big idea. What's wrong with this picture? Well, what's wrong with this picture is that's not what the reflex layer looks like. It looks like that. Okay, so we have to think about what that looks like. And so what I'm going to do is I'm not going to tell you about this theory. I'm going to tell you about one consequence of it that's pretty interesting. So I'm going to kind of go. So the point is, we didn't. When I was a kid, I was worrying about these problems, and this stuff is so fast compared to this that you didn't have an issue, right? You're just fast. You're just in this corner because of electronics. But cheap, slow biology is more like this. So you've got sparse, delayed, quantized, sensing community, everything, right? And the view from this world was that makes things completely intractable, NP hard, god awful, stay away from it. Well, we got to do it. And it turns out it's actually not so hard. So what you need is a new theory. And it turns out, just in control theory, I've been kind of doing this for 45 years or so. This is the most exciting single development and control theory that I've ever worked on. And anyway, so it's called system level synthesis. Wang and Motney are the main names in this. Motney is now a professor, another graduate student. He's a professor at Penn, just started there. Wang is working for GE now. Okay, so let me just say, I'm going to kind of skip through this because I'm actually running out of time. I've got 5 more minutes, and I'm going to try to give you a punchline. Okay, so I'm going to skip this. What I'm going to tell you is it tells you how you have to build controllers if you're in this speed accuracy trade-off regime, okay? Which, like I said, control theorists have never been in before. So this is new territory for us. But there's a natural way to implement the controllers, and I want to try to explain what it is. So if you're not a control theorist, this is going to go by very quickly. I apologize. This is our simple model. You've got state feedback. What you do is you have the closed loop map, and it turns out everything that you care about is convex in these closed loop maps. But you can build the controller out of it by what you first do is you feed back what you expect to see. You get an estimate for the delta. Once you have that, then you have the controller. That's too fast. I apologize. But this structure is fascinating, and I want to explain to you why it's so interesting. Okay. So what you have in this system is a very simple feed forward, just a wire, and very complex dynamics in feedback toward the sensors. So coming from the sensors is a very simple path. Going back out towards the sensors is a very complex prediction. And what are you predicting? You're predicting what the consequences of your action are going to be on the system. So one of my information theory colleagues, Michel Efros, calls this outformation. Why is it so interesting? Well, the theorem, outformation cannot improve information. So Shannon tells you this is useless because it can't improve information. And it actually hurts because you're taking away real estate that you could be using for this. So it looks crazy. It's for speed. If the world is changing slowly, but every once in a while changes in a way that's dangerous, you want to know very quickly. So the claim is vision has to be organized this way. Let's go check. Classic picture. V1, V2 splits up. You've got the what stream and the where stream. You know this a lot better than I do. But there's feedback everywhere. And there's more feedback than there is forward. And it's really slow. And it's a lot more synapses. I mean, we could go on and on. I mean, it's much more feedback than forward. But the feedback is slow and complex. And then there's these fast, simple paths. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff. And we're going to focus on this because we think this is like where things are is more important when you have to be fast than what things are. Okay. So this picture, right? Those are very strikingly similar pictures. This complex outformation is exactly what these NMDA receptors appear to be, or synapses appear to be doing. But if you didn't have this picture, this just looks like nonsense. I mean, so people make up things like predictive coding, but why are you doing predictive coding? Not because it's useful for information or bandwidth, but because it's useful for delay. Okay. So cheap, slow biology means that you have to use this. And then this is just a popular magazine, but just, if you read this, it says, I don't normally read slides, but in this case I'm going to. Activity in the visual cortex and other sensory areas is dominated by signals about body motion, not noise. It used to be thought, oh, this is all noise. But when somebody correlated it with body movements, down to little ticks and twitches. So we think we now have a theory for why this is. Okay. Let me just say I'm out of time. Let me just say one last thing. So these kinds of diversity sweet spots are everywhere. A really simple one is if you've got walking, driving, and flying, if you do them in the right order, walk, drive, walk, fly, walk, drive, walk, then you get this diversity sweet spot where you're as fast and accurate. You're almost as fast as an airplane, and you're almost as accurate as walking, but you can come from Europe, which I did earlier this week. The problem is you have bad crashes. And where does this fit in? And then you have all this stuff, right? I mean, we're destroying the planet, not entirely due to this, but partly due to this. So what's the space of this? What's the right space to think about this? And so the idea is that this is sort of the right space. The frequency of events, common or rare, and whether they're here and now or they're far away, and so we tend not to worry about them. Okay. So this is crashes, and so the idea is that car crashes kill 1 million people a year, so they're a lot worse. But when these happen, this is the 737 MAX. They're really bad because we kill a lot of people all at once, right? And then there's this stuff. This is common, but it's kind of remote from us. It's happening at the Arctic and later in time, and so our kids will have to worry about it, but we don't, right? And some people don't even believe it's true. But this is the thing we really ought to worry about. The rare stuff that's global in the future. And there are some horror stories that you can tell right now about what's going to happen. And it's going to happen. We just don't know when. It could be next week. It could be in 200 years. It will happen, and we all die right away. Bunches of those things. So now we see this is not unavoidable. These trade-offs are unavoidable. But I think these outcomes are avoidable. But how did we get in the mess in the first place? Because of layered architectures, right? We have the laws constrain the possible. The architecture lets you build all stuff. But this virtualization creates these sweet spots. They're everywhere in our cities, in our transportation systems, in all of our technologies. We don't see the consequences because we've virtualized away all the details. So this is what happens. You hide the important details. You hide them. You don't see them. So you get all this crap. And we don't see them, right? But that's a consequence of these same virtualized layered architectures that are so powerful in creating capabilities. So what do we need is we need to find and fix the crashes before they kill us. And we don't do this very well at all. And Boeing's gotten really bad at it. They used to be good at it. But globally, we're terrible at it. Just turn on the news. I mean, it's just, and this is going to be an increasing nightmare unless we get our head around this. So that's just to end on a good note anyway. Okay, I'll stop there. But this is totally universal, and we got to deal with it.
Any questions or comments?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
You're talking about the different size of accents, right?
I'm sorry?
You're talking about different size of accents and...
Yes, different axon sizes within an otherwise fairly fixed size nerve.
In these
Yeah.
small accents and very big accents, what are the situation of myelination?
That's, okay, I'm assuming we're looking at all, okay, so the question is, I talked about axon size, but I didn't talk about axon myelination. Really important. So I'm more or less assuming I'm living in the part of the nervous system that is all heavily myelinated, all the white matter, long stuff. But your point is very well taken. That olfactory system up at the top, unmyelinated, very slow. Lots of bits, very, very slow. So you can add that into the picture, but I didn't talk about it, and I tried to focus on, in this driving problem, I think your bottlenecks are all heavily myelinated axons. But in general, absolutely.
Slow sensing, they should be unmyelinated.
Exactly. And olfaction is. So the one thing I showed up there that was unmyelinated is olfaction. So you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
Thank you. Please.
Yeah. Thanks for the interesting talk. We enjoyed. So I have a quick question. So for these new control theory systems that you have you explored the controllability and observability, state controllability for this system or no? These two?
Yeah, so what happens is controllability and observability are still there, but there's much more important issues than that. So now you have the issue of, are your sensors dense enough to see what you, so it's not just, it's a degree of observability. But now you also have localizability, you also have the ability to deal with this quantization delay. So observability and controllability are still there, but we teach them to juniors and now high school kids, right? So they're now more peripheral or basic things. They're still there, but now there's a whole bunch of new issues that transcend those, and so they become a little less important. So.
Okay, just wanted to know what is your opinion.
It doesn't go, they don't go away, they just get added to. So.
Okay, any other questions? If not, thank you so much for this amazing talk. Thank you, John. Thank you.